Our feature presenter tonight is going to be Reverend May. Andrea is going to do a little bit of review from the previous week when she becomes available. But I'm going to start us off in prayer. So let's just take a moment and everybody just breathe in very deeply and just know that you're breathing in the very breath and life of God. And as you breathe out, you release all the cares and all the concerns of this day and everything that is outside of this discussion. Just take another deep breath, breathing in deeply, breathing in the very breath and life of God, and release slowly from your chest up to your nasal, and let it all release and relax for a moment. Father, Mother God, we are indeed grateful for this opportunity to come together with people of like mind as we work to uplift our consciousness to be better reflections of you on this earthly plane. We thank you for the ideas that are brought forth in these discussions. We thank you for the subject matter. We thank you for the lessons and the messages that have been handed down through the ages by your wastrel, Jesus the Christ. And we thank you for everyone who is here today and everyone that's on their way. And for those who would like to be, but are unable to make it, who may see us later on Facebook or YouTube, we greet them also at this time. And we say, thank you, God. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for waking us up this day. Thank you for so many blessings, too numerous for us to count. And with this, we say, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So everyone's doing well? I'll take that. I see all the heads nodding. So I guess everyone is doing well. Reverend May will be presenting shortly. I know Andrea is still trying to get one person into class, and some of the people are coming in a little bit later than they used to come in. I don't know, for whatever reason that is.
Would you like for me to read the DI?
Well, why don't you do that while we're waiting, Reverend May? Thank you. I was about to reach for it, but let's let you do it.
Oh, okay. You got it. I just wanted to. Do you want me to do it?
No, you do it. I have to find mine.
Okay.
Actually, I have it right here, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see here. Today is the. Let's see here. It's peace and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
Today is the 19th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, today I declare peace and prosperity in a world that is hungry for change.
Yes.
With the power of collective consciousness, let's visualize and affirm. Thank you, God, for peace and prosperity within the minds and hearts of people all over the world. I declare peace and prosperity in our country and in the mind and hearts of officials with decision-making power to affect the nation and our lives. I decree peace and prosperity in the cities, communities, and townships. Peace, goodwill, and economic abundance are established, even as blaring headlines tell a different story. I decree peace and prosperity in my body, mind, and affairs, and I am strengthened, healed, and uplifted as I see only the good expressing in and through me. Thank you, God, for establishing peace and prosperity within your children everywhere. In Psalms 122:7 reads, may there be peace inside your walls and prosperity in your palaces.
Amen. Amen. That is so important to everyone here that we do establish peace in our life. No matter what, you want to have peace. You can't really function as long as you are troubled in mind and in spirit. You must have peace, even if you have prosperity. that is not as important as it is to have peace. Prosperity without peace will lead to the end of your prosperity, because you'll always, that peace is what we always seek. You know, at times our life seems like we're going through a process of chemicalization. Things are always bubbling up to the surface. And it doesn't matter what you have material in your life during those times. By the same token, you can have very little material wealth, but if you are at peace, you can feel better than a person who's a billionaire. Any thoughts along those lines from anybody before we turn it over to Reverend Andrea? No? Okay, I guess I said it all. Andrea, are you there? You're on mute.
I am. Hey, everybody.
Good evening.
How you doing? And you know what? I'm trying something different, guys. I got to tell you, I am trying something different. I did an update in my, Mama, could you turn your television off? Because I could hear a lot of noise. I got my mother on the thing. But I put us on Facebook Live. So this is a new function that I just did an update and it just popped up. So I don't know what that is going to look like. I also got us recording. So, you know, I love tech stuff. So hold up one second. Hey, Ma, could you turn your television down? All right.
Hello, Andrea.
Yes.
Hi. Listen, on my end, it is different. It shows recording and it shows live on Facebook.
Do you see everybody else?
Well, let's see. Let me see. I can see, just like I can see Dan. She looks like she's having a good day today. Yeah, I could see everybody. Well, everybody who's showing a picture, I could see them.
Well, we're going to keep moving. I'm going to just take a few minutes just to cover what I felt like was necessary to cover. I'm not going to cover the whole chapter, but I'm going to take a few minutes to cover what I thought was necessary to cover from the chapter, which is how beliefs about others affect your reality. I only partially went through that. I spent a lot of time last week talking about the past, the present, and the now. But one of the things that I really want to point out is that we want to be in the now. And one of the things that really stop us from being in the now is when we allow our beliefs about others to affect the future interactions that we have with people. How we think about others actually affects how we present ourselves to others, and that affects the relationship. And so the primary message in this chapter is that we are to approach our relationships with others with an open heart and without judgment. And the only way we can really do this is to keep ourselves in the now. Because if we don't, and I forgot to take my camera off, if we don't keep ourselves in the now, what we do is we bring with us all of the interactions we've had previously with a person or with a group of people. So if you've always had this type of experience with this person, every time I see this person, they just drain me. They're argumentative. Then you can never be fresh and brand new in the relationship, because you don't allow that person to grow out of your belief system about them. It could be that this happened a zillion years ago. Maybe this happened 10 years ago and you run into this person, and whatever experiences you've had with this person, you remember. And you're not open and receptive to the moment. And so we do this with individual people, but we also make generalizations about groups of people. I want you guys to fill in the blank for yourself. Men are blank. You don't have to share it. Fill in the blank. Women are blank. White people are blank. Black people are fill in the blank. Young people are fill in the blank. And the list can go on and on. The writer says that we have generalizations that we make about all kind of different people. Young people, old people, fat people, small people. We make these kind of generalizations about people. And what we have learned is that what we think, our intentions, our beliefs, everything has a vibration. And so this affects our interactions with people. And I'm going to tell you, this is really a hard part of this teaching because we don't want to let go of our generalizations. And the reason why we don't want to let go of our generalizations is because we believe we need them. We believe that these generalizations actually protect us. That's why we don't really want to let them go. So I'm going to read just a few things that is out of the book because I want to get to Reverend May and I don't want to hold her up. But before I turn it over to Reverend May, there is also an article that I found that talks about the ego. Because I'm finding that there are people that's in the discussion group that really don't understand what we're talking about when we talk about the ego. A lot of times language and terminology really confuses people. Number one, because we often talk about the ego as if it is a separate entity from us. When in reality, the ego, according to Freud, and also I believe this, I've said it before, the ego is actually a part of your personality. And that's why I often say that we need to have that ego intact. You don't want to get rid of it because there are aspects in your personality that you actually need. So we're going to cover that. But I'm going to go to the book and I'm going to go to 135. And I'm just going to read a couple of key points. So one of the things we need to remember at top of page, actually 134, no matter how your mind divides up humanity, because we do, we divide up humanity in groups. We divide up humanity between rich people, poor people, people that go to church, people that don't go to church, Black people, white people, red, green, and blue. We do this. But no matter how the mind divides up humanity conceptually, the ego has an opinion about these people. And guess what? The ego believes that its opinions are correct and will magnify incidents and circumstances to support those opinions. And so one of the things that we need to come into the realization about, if we're really serious about our spiritual journey, if we truly are serious about this thing, we need to come into the realization that all of the boundaries that we put up in regards to what differentiates us from other people, these things are not the truth of our being. They are false. In reality, we all are spirit, and we are all one and the same. When you talk about love, the idea and divine mind of universal oneness, you're really talking about oneness and sameness. And so we have to start to peel away anything that makes us forget that we are one. When we start to be judgmental about other people, we have to be careful of being judgmental. The scripture says, judge not, or you're going to be judged. In the same way that you judge others, you will be judged. Here's a key thing in the middle of 134. Any of your beliefs can and will shape your behavior toward people. If you don't trust people and you have a general idea that you cannot trust people, then that's how you're going to act when you're around people, that they are untrustworthy. Now, I'm not saying that you have to walk around like Pollyanna. This is not what I'm saying. You have to trust that you have a guidance system within you called your intuition that will tell you when you need to be in alert. But you don't approach all people as if they're trying to do something to you. And there are people in the world that actually do that. The more aware you are, and the less your beliefs unconsciously shape your behavior, the better off you're going to be. That's why we have to have this examined life, because we need to examine our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our reactions, the words that come out of our mouth. We got to work on this stuff. Your beliefs limit your choices about how you behave. If you don't trust men, you're going to act like that time and time and time again. And you're going to draw experiences that support that you should not trust men. Remember that law of vibration and the law of attraction says like begets like. Your thoughts are going to draw to you experiences that are like those thoughts. And we have to get real serious about this stuff. And this is the part that people have the most problems with. Letting go of their judgments and opinions and beliefs about people and groups of people. And the truth of the matter is we spend most of our time with other people. So we need to get this thing right. I have 4 stars at the top of 135. It says the eagle's beliefs are the rules that we live by. This is how we live our life. The trouble is that the eagle's rules and formulas don't take into account what's actually happening. And approaching every situation with the same set of rules is like dressing the same way every day, even though the weather is changing. You don't give the opportunity for it to be a change, for you to have a different experience. This is why I wanted to take this chapter and put it behind the backdrop of the here and now. Because if you're operating in the now, you don't bring all of those judgments with you. You allow, you address that person based on what is happening with you and that person in the moment. You're not looking at them and judging them based on what happened 10 years ago. And you'll never forget that. So it says in the middle of 135, the mind loves to lump people in categories because it's simpler that way. So your beliefs about others not only limit your flexibility with others and your ability to be with others freshly in the moment, but it also creates a particular experience of reality that reinforces your beliefs. Just as beliefs about yourself become self-fulfilling prophecies, the beliefs that you have about other people become self-fulfilling prophecies. And I'm telling you, a big chunk of why we have the anxieties that we have, the stressors that we have, the feelings that we go through is tied to our interactions with each other. That's why this thing is so important. So let's see, where else did I say I wanted to go? And so know that your ideas about others is really a part of your programming. It could date way back from when you were a child. You know, maybe you had some bad experiences when you were in elementary school with kids. Kids can be very mean. where you got the opinion that people just don't like you, and you carry that with you everywhere you go, because you're still looking back at that little girl or boy that was having those experiences. So I'm going to go to 138. And so the writer tells us some beliefs are truer than others. You hear the writer saying that the beliefs of the ego are not your true self. How do we know when we're dealing with the beliefs of the ego versus our true beliefs? Our true beliefs are based on the truth of our being. And so the truth of our being is that we are spirit. Each and every one of us, created in the very image and likeness of God. And all that the Father has, each and every one of us, we are in potentiality. And so even though somebody might be acting out and acting up, when you magnify in your mind that part of them that is spirit, what you magnify grows. And you may have a total different experience with that person because how you are coming with that person versus another person that is dealing with their judgments. We said last week that we want to let people grow into their experiences and have their lessons and support them while they're growing and having their lessons. And we have to learn how to do that. You don't keep reminding people over and over again about something that they did a zillion years ago. Allow them to grow out of it and support them in the process. And I would say that while I'm trying to grow out of my own madness, that people do the same thing for me. So it says that some beliefs are truer than others. The closer your beliefs are to the truth about life, the more you will feel the peace, love, joy, and gratitude and contentment of your true nature. So beliefs like those can override the ego. Love can override the ego. Any belief that you have that allows love to flow back and forth between two people, that is close to the truth of your being. And so you want that kind of experience. You want to enjoy each other. One of the things that I love is the ability that the opportunity that I've had to meet so many beautiful people, not just in my work with working with volunteers, but also in ministry. And if you want those kind of experiences, you got to magnify them. And you can't be afraid to do it. People are afraid to love because they believe that they need these beliefs that people are trying to get them in order to protect themselves from these people. Here it says in the middle of 139, you don't need your beliefs. What a radical idea that is. Your beliefs can only get in the way of reality, which is the experience of peace, love, and harmony. Every chance you get to experience peace, love, and harmony, grab it with both hands. And the more and more you put yourself in a position to feel that, the more likely you're going to have more experiences like that. And you start to recondition your mind. If you have positive beliefs and ideas about someone, you will be open to that person. I'm at the bottom of 139, and love will flow easily. But if you have judgments about someone else, those will taint your relationship and interfere with you seeing the good in that person and with loving him or her. And it says here that judgments is the primary reason that relationships actually fail. I don't care what the relationship is, whether it's a romantic relationship, familiar relationship, whether it is work relationships, it is our judgments about each other that make our relationships fail. If you have a problem with someone, you need to examine what the problem is and where it lies. Is it lying in me, or is it the other person? It could be a little bit of both. But if that other person is going through their madness, let them go through their madness, but that has nothing to do with you. You continue to know the truth of who you are and the truth of who they are, and you bless them on their journey. Does that mean that you lay yourself down to have someone walk over you? No. I cannot express that enough. This is not what we're talking about. But we're talking about an attitude where you are not judging them, and you are realizing that we all have things that we're going through. And you're blessing them as they go through whatever they're going through. And you move yourself out of the way so they don't go through it all over you. Because everyone is not healthy enough to live in the front row of your life. If you have to move yourself out of the way, just like you would if you see a Mack truck coming, you move yourself out of the way. But you continue to know the truth of them, because their behavior is not who they are. And so I don't know how far I've gone, but I do know that it is 7:28. And so I need to let Reverend May get going. Remember to continue to question yourself. Some important questions to ask about your judgments and beliefs about someone is this always true, or is this just happening at this time? You want to ask these things. And so here is a key thing on 141. Even if you keep your judgments to yourself, realize that your thoughts have vibration, that you walk around with a vibration. You want to work on your judgments. It's not just about keeping it to yourself. It's about realizing the truth of who you are and who they are. Even if you keep your judgments to yourself, the internal climate created by your closed heart will result in others closing their heart to you. Even if you don't know why your heart is closed. Like attracts like. Judgment attracts judgment. A closed heart attracts and causes closed hearts, not open ones. And so I'm going to tell you that fortunately, you have power and value in your thinking, that you can change your thinking. Since your judgments are just an idea, you can do something about the judgments before it distorts your perceptions of your friends and your partners and damages your relationship. You can catch your judgments when they form and say no to them. That's what you could do. Start to focus on the positive traits of the people you're involved with, remembering that what you focus on magnifies. That's what you could do. And so with that being said, I will hand it over to Reverend May.
Good evening, everybody. Hello.
Hey, Reverend, I hear you.
Okay.
Good evening, Reverend.
Okay. Good evening.
Buenas
Tonight
tardes.
Good
pardon
evening.
me?
Buenas tardes.
Reina's, what was it again?
Buenas tardes.
Okay, all right, okay. As long as it's not ochos. Okay, love and surrender. This is the third part of the trilogy, and it appears to be a very, very important part of the book. And it's love and surrender. And where it has love, I'd like to put God and surrender, because God is love. Is that right? Are we agreeing on that? Do we agree that God is love?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, it says that this is really an important part of these trilogies, because in the other lessons it's more about thinking and power, but in this lesson it's more about love. So that means we're going to find out how all of this then relates more to God and how that relationship helps us in the process of surrendering. And I want to go back to March of this year when I was in Cleveland for the life celebration of, I call her Sister Idella Cleveland. And the Grahams wanted to take me out to dinner, and I went to church with the Cleveland family. I wanted to do that. They asked me to go, and I did. And then we went on to dinner. But as I began to prepare for this lesson in prayer, I was brought to understand that this event that I had there at dinner, I'm going to bring back to you right now, because I want to let you know just how powerful all of this is. And it was at this dinner that Reverend Andrew and Reverend Graham were talking to me about their ministry and what was going to take place. And I began to feel the Spirit moving in me. And I began to feel that it was getting more powerful and more powerful in me. And I knew that if I didn't try to get hold of myself, I'm either going to run around this restaurant or run out the door, because that's just how powerful it really was. And you see, if there is a sin, it's the sin of quenching the Spirit. And I try so hard not to do that. But I want you to know the building of consciousness in this total thing we're doing here, and where you really are in this process of surrender. Because as he was talking, he was just going, he was just in it, and finally I just said, you're out of control. You're out of control. You're out of control. And he looked at me and he was like, what? And I couldn't stop saying, you're out of control. You're out of control. And he said, well, Reverend Mayor, what are you saying? I said, you're out of control because God has taken complete control of your ministry. And that is as it should be. Do you remember that, Reverend Graham?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
And so I was trying to get myself together, and I got still, and I heard Reverend Andrew say, leave her alone for a few minutes, just leave her alone. And then finally, when I came to myself, it is as it should be. But I want to take you to where I was then and where we are now. Because from the beginning of this ministry, back in February, we started off with what we believe. We went into Lent. And in part of that Lent, Reverend talked to us about forgiveness, which is another way of doing what? Surrendering. He talked about repent, which is another way of surrendering. Then he had me to give comments on Jesus' experience in the wilderness and then his surrendering to his ministry. And he went back into the edges there of the shore of Capernaum, and he told everybody to repent and chose these fishermen to move with him to start his ministry. This ministry moved forward in interviewing me, and it came out a lot of the things that God through me brought forth in the precious pearl. Much of it was surrendering and forgiveness. Then we went into the kingdom, and we had our lesson with Lisa. We also had our lesson with Reverend Graham when he gave us the symbolic information, and he gave us all of the information we needed to know to help us move through that. But in teaching and expressing the 7 churches, Lisa brought out from the beginning of Ephesus to the end of the 7th church, where she said, now after we know what we have done, what we've been admonished for, and what we need to do, it is time now to surrender. Then we came into the Jesus trilogy. And now I bring you that tonight we are on surrendering. And I just wanted you to take note of just how divine this ministry in love and order has gone. Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't
Yes,
know why
ma'am.
I don't hear anybody.
Well,
Yes,
because we
yes.
have mics off, it takes us a minute to open them up. We don't want to have a lot of background noise.
Right. Amen.
They haven't heard what I said?
Oh, we heard you. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear you.
Amen. Yes.
We just don't want to
Amen.
cause
Just mute it.
feedback while you're talking.
That's right.
I'm letting you know that it is in complete divine synchronicity that we are on track of what God wants us to do. And that coming to this session tonight, surrendering, it's been what we've been on all the time. So now we're here now to find out just what it is, what we have to do. And so then I start with the introduction where it says that Jesus said in this book that you are no different than me. He said the gift of the Father is given to all his children, and this gift is his own divinity. In other words, he is coming here again, as he did in the past, to let us know the truth about ourselves and what we need to do, then to realize it, to do it. And what we need to understand is that there's something that we need to let go that keep us in this belief that we're just human, but lift us up to where we really should be. And it's going to take some surrendering to do this. Are you with me?
Amen.
Yeah.
Ma'am.
Okay, so now what he's saying is then that the most important thing that we need to know now, even though the other two books in the trilogy were important, that this is very, very important because it's about the heart of us. It's about the very foundation of our being because it's about God and it's about unconditional love.
Amen.
And it's saying that the will or the self or the ego mind believes that it has the power and it is preventing all of the good of God to take its place in us. To have these experiences that we're just not going to have unless we find a way to surrender all to God. Any questions? Jesus tells us in this introduction that it's about his message. And I remember in his message in the revealing word, it's yes, the gospel of Jesus was that all men can become God incarnate. And I remember last week or a week or two ago, we talked about incarnation. But Jesus said then that when you come to embrace all of the divinity that is in you, that pure truth about who you are, when you move in and through this world, you then are expressing God in action. In other words, you are God incarnate. And it also says, and I have the foundations of unity here, that this became so much a part of him that he also made it his mission. And the reason that he made it his mission is that it's about our thinking. And I just heard Reverend talk about that. Unless we begin to know that we have to stay connected with the true thinker of thought, and that's God. I don't know if they hear me. Are you hearing me?
Reverend, people, it takes a minute to take your mic off. I was going to say that, but we are muted. So it takes a minute to talk. Because if we don't mute, it's a lot of background noise.
I see what you mean. Okay, but as long as I know that you're hearing me.
Yes.
Okay.
Amen.
I
Okay.
hear you.
So now what he's saying is that it's just that important that it became his mission to help us understand that God is not out there and we're here, that we are always connected with the thinker of our true thought. And because of this, when we do everything that we do and finally surrender all to God, then we actually become God incarnate. There's nothing expressing at all about us in humankind, nothing but the true divine spirit.
Amen.
Somebody said amen. Okay, good. All right. So now I want to know, what do you think the ego is? We've been talking about it. We said that it has power because it's been given power. Is that not right? We have the power to think good or not so good. We have the choice. It's just that there's something that has to be done. And what this book is saying in this chapter is actually surrender something that brings us on the way. What is it that we have to surrender? Now, what
I was going to answer that question.
Go ahead.
The ego is who we think we are.
It's a set of beliefs that we set up in our mind. You know, it's a way of, it's kind of a protective mechanism. That it's a part of our subconscious that we use as a protective mechanism, whether it's by labeling or trying to explain things to ourselves or whatever. But it is a set of beliefs that are based on mostly fear. So most of the beliefs are going to have a negative connotation to them. So I believe that what we have to do, although the ego can do some things that are positive, by being based in fear, and because it is a protective mechanism, you know, it's going to be something that you have to let down, like you let down your guard in order to actually be able to accept what is true about yourself. You have to surrender the ego. You have to surrender those beliefs, or you'll never get to the crux of what you really are.
Can I give this quote? Is from Asira Sanada. And the quote says, the ego is the veil between what you think you are and what you actually are. You are under the illusion of the mind, totally unaware that you are directed by a big load of stories. And so it's that it actually, that ego part of us is separating us from realizing the truth of our being. It's like a veil that needs to be.
And
can I step in on this ego?
Yes.
I've heard all the things you guys are saying about the ego. The ego, and I've been told that the ego is a motivator. The ego is that which gives you ambition. The ego is everything that you need to succeed. Now, the ego I'm talking about is the spiritualized ego. We downgrade our spiritualized ego when we believe that we are in charge of the ego. When we believe we are in charge, we get jealousy, we get envy, which is also jealousy, we get fears. But for me, an ego is nothing more than a motivator that tells me the word of God. I can be all things, I can do all things. There's nothing out of my reach. I have a problem with the word ego because when most people say ego, they're talking about something negative. But the ego is a gift from God, as everything we have is a gift from God. And we determine what we do with our gifts from God. God doesn't make us conform to any idea that God had for us. God gives us ideas, guides us down a path, and then allows us to make the decision on how we use it. Okay, so I have an issue with the negative when people say that the ego is a negative thing, when in my heart, I know it is that thing that causes me to be successful.
It was
There's the
Now that's a way
spiritualized
of
ego,
looking
I
at
got
and there's
all
the
that at the
adverse
same
ego.
time. Okay. I love it.
that's a way of looking at it. And if you go into the revealing word, it actually tells you that because it breaks it down. Now,
Okay.
the ego is the veil that separates who you think you are from who you are. When you talk about the spiritualized ego, you are talking about the I am in you. And the I am in you, you can do all things because that is your link to God. That's your oneness with God. That's you know, that's it. And then when you talk about ego in the negative sense, you
The
really
adverse ego.
about the adverse ego.
right.
Right.
But
So it's different ways
this
to
is the
look at
reason
it.
why Jesus made it so important to have it as his mission, because you have it. It's a gift. It's always said in this book that the ego is a gift. It's a gift of choice and will. But he made it his mission to help us understand that it only works in the way that God really hoped that we would work it, is if we realize that we are connected to the true thinker of thought and that we ourselves are not always doing it. And so sometimes we will get into situations, and this chapter is talking about that, where we think that the false mind is really the mind of power, and it is not. And I think on the last page, and I don't want to get back there, that's just soon, but the last page in this chapter, it says, when we are trying to surrender, because that's what this chapter is about, it says the first thing you must surrender is what you think you know.
Come on.
Into the Fowler's palace. And it requires you to be naked and do all the things you need to know in order to find out just where you stand. But I really want to know what it is about this surrendering thing that seems to be so hard for people to do. So I just want to know if you can give me some definitions of just what surrender is.
Mhm. Mhm. It's hard because oh
Go ahead.
okay, it's hard because the word surrender into itself is an act of giving away your will physically in our minds under someone else's control. And so when we say surrender, you have to understand what type of surrender are you doing. See, there's that physical surrender of man, and then there's that spiritual surrendering to God. When we are surrendering to God, all we're saying is, let thy will be done. Show me my path. Tell me what it is that you would have me do, God, and let me go about your business. Now we're talking about a human surrender. Did you want to say something, Reverend?
I wanted to say, why is that so difficult for us to do, though?
Because we don't trust giving up our control. We as a human specimen, we don't trust giving our control to our wife, to our bosses at work, to the ministers in a church. We don't want to give up control of ourselves because we think then they have imprisoned us and taken away our will. And the will is very important. Choice is extremely important to everyone. And so we get into a problem with giving it up.
I have a slightly different take on surrender.
Hit it.
Okay.
So when I think about surrendering, and I know I'm coming from a point of view of working with these things for a while, but when I think about surrendering, I'm thinking about surrendering all of the false beliefs that we've been holding on to. And so I want to release any thought of people are trying to do something to me, suspicion. I want to release the idea of lack and limitation. I want to release the idea that I know. I really want to release that, because then when I release that idea of I know, then I leave myself open for God to move through me. I know that's my husband. I'm a mute him. When I let go of the idea of I know, I release that idea that, say, if I know where this ministry is going. No, I don't. I have to open myself up for new avenues that I haven't even thought about yet. So when I released that idea of I know, I released the idea for something better than I could ever conceive of. So I look at surrender a little bit differently. It's not so much giving up my power. You know, it's giving up those things that are holding me back and weighing me down.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a spiritual surrender here.
And that's the one that we have to get to, because
Mm-hmm.
this is what we had when Reverend Townley, which was the writer of the Kingdom Come, he said over there on page 33 that he was doing okay with trying to get rid of his addictions until they told him that he had to begin to exercise or treat in a manner of spiritual surrender. So now what's the difference between the two? Okay, we talked about surrender is a form of what people feel like they're giving up on something, giving out. We are taught in this society that you win, you do this and everything, and so usually when there's a conquering, everybody comes out with their hands up, they surrender to whomever is taking over control and all that kind of thing. But it says that the spiritual surrender is a key skill that will serve you greatly as you continue to ascend into a higher level of love, light, truth, and embodying yourself more fully. In other words, true surrender flows from true renunciation at the end of a long, arduous spiritual effort. And it's something that really has to be done if we're going to allow other changes in our lives from whatever the false way of thinking or the false will is thinking to the truth really way of thinking. And Reverend Townley in this book said he couldn't do it. At the time, he really couldn't do it, even though it was part of his treatment, because he felt like that he was giving up so much of himself. And sometimes we will get into an egoic level that we really begin to, hey, if we don't know how to do it, it ain't going to get done. So then we don't want to do it. We just don't want to let go and let anybody or just even God come and have anything to say about it. But then what is surrendered? When we really go through the process, what is it that is surrendered? And the book says the I. It says that is the one thing that we have to surrender, but we don't give it away. We don't let it go. We just spiritualize it. We don't let it go. But I also want to ask this question here. Did Jesus have the problem surrendering?
Yes. When he was in Gethsemane, he was going through some changes there, and he had to pray through it. And he said, Father, if you would remove this cup from me. But then he surrendered by saying, but even so, thy will be done.
Right.
Was there any other instances where you have read that he had a problem with his ego?
It's a chat. Let me see what the chat says. He also somewhere said, but it is really a problematic. Shauna, can you talk and tell us what you mean? It sounds really interesting. He also somewhere said it is really a problematic. It is a problem.
What is the problem?
My Shauna doesn't usually talk. Let me unmute her. If I could find her. Sherry, Shauna. She may not talk. Shauna, you want to tell us what you mean? Oh, it isn't perfect, just looking for the buttons. I got you unmuted though.
No, you don't.
I'm looking at her. She's not muted.
If this is her right here at 216
No.
647.
Her name says Shauna. SEAN.
Oh, up there. Okay.
Yep. So when she wants to tell us, she will.
Okay. Can
Okay.
someone else give me instances where there was a problem that he showed with his ego?
Are you talking about the 40 days?
No. Now remember, he is saying that his experiences of what he had to do to surrender his I, or the ego, has to also be done by us. Remember, now he's in a teaching realm. Remember, he was our teacher. And even though he taught by precepts, parables, and miracles, he also taught in a very good way of example, which was his best way of teaching. So everything that he's done or did do is what we are to do. Because remember, this little thing, I think we had some T-shirts I had put in the bookstore. It says, "What would Jesus do?" And so now I'm asking you, what did he do? And so I just, to help us understand that he is still an example, or his time in that time. And he's saying in this book that even though he was there with that message, it's still the same message for us today. So I'm saying, what did he do that we could understand maybe this, that we're doing the same thing? And then how he got over it. What did he do to get over it? So now Reverend Andrea just said one of his problems was that he had some fears. And that fear at that time in Gethsemane, which was really the garden of agony, and I think Reverend James brought that up when we were going in Lent, because, you know, when people get out of there and think that they have gotten over some things, what do we do when we find out that we haven't? And I answered, we go back. Okay. Well, just so happened he didn't leave. He went there with his disciples, but he had to keep going back to them and reminding them, I am in prayer here and I need some help, you know.
Y'all need to
But
be quiet.
the problem at that time was death. His problem had gotten to the point where he had to do a total surrender to the truth about his being. But what are some of the other egoic situations that he expressed in his life? Is recorded.
Well,
in life.
he also made the statement about casting his pearls before swine.
Okay.
Meaning, why should I even tell you people anything? He was talking about those who are not Jewish, of Jewish heritage. Why should I even, waste my time with you people, was what he was saying.
Yes. That's excellent, because he had a problem with discrimination. Another thing with that problem was also his experience with the woman at the well.
Right.
Because as thirsty as he was, Jews did not like going even through Samaria, let alone talking to him. And yet he was so thirsty at the well, which is a deep kind of thing, because he wanted the water, which is the truth. And yet here this woman could draw water or draw truth to give him, and he didn't want to do it because he was dealing with discrimination, what you just said. He had to surrender his will to the truth, and that was that this mission of his was for all people. Can someone give me another one?
Well, if you're going along those lines, there's a few examples.
Oh, yeah.
But the one example that rings the most true to me is when the Canaanite woman came and he was dining with his guys, and she wanted her daughter, I believe, to be healed. And he said, why should I take the food of the chosen children and cast them to the dogs? And she was so persistent that he had to be impressed. And he said, I've never seen faith such as this. And so he said, it's going to be done to you as you believe. And so that was the evolution of Jesus, moving beyond just what they called the so-called chosen children.
Absolutely. He had to get that kind of thing out of his mind. He had to move that from his false beliefs to the truth. What about changing the water into wine?
Well, he told his mom that it wasn't his time yet.
But what did he do?
He changed the water into wine.
He did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What about the fig tree situation? I'm talking about things that's done now from the ego.
Oh,
What did
he cursed the fig tree.
Yeah, I'm sure did. Now, what did that have to do with his mission?
Just pissed him off a little bit. He cursed that fig tree and said it will never bear fruit.
Okay, now we're supposed to be here expressing the truth about God, and he is our perfect example, but he's letting us know, well, hey, you know, I was back then, I did some of these same things, I understand what's happening, but these are things that we have to clear out of the way. And then what about this big to-do with the temple?
Oh, he flipped the tables like my boys.
I mean, he flipped, didn't he? He
He
flipped.
flipped those tables just like my kids do. They flip the tables. But yeah.
He flipped. And so these were examples of his working through the ego. He's here on a mission and he's teaching the gospel. That is true. But yet his small false self stands in the way. And it's an example that the same thing happens to us, but then he had a way of getting over it. But now the one thing that I wanted to dwell on a little bit here is what Reverend Andrea said about the garden situation. He knew that he had come to a point where he had just about moved through every false idea he had, but death. And so when he went to Jerusalem, he knew what crucifixion was all about. And he knew that it was going to be a hard thing. But he had to surrender to, what do we say in denials? There is no evil. There is no what?
There is no death. Death,
Yeah.
poverty, old age, they cannot master me, for they are not real.
Why?
They are not real.
They are not real. They have power over us because we think they're real. And now here he comes, that he's surrendered and let go of all this other stuff, this discrimination and all that stuff. And now here he is at the one thing that he's gonna have to overcome. And he knows how brutal it is. He knows how humiliating it is. But he knows that the one thing he's got to do is get into Gethsemane, because that was that one place, that place they called the Garden of Agony, even though they said it was really beautiful, that he had to pray. And so he went there. Now he's got to have some prayer. So then if we're in a situation where we're trying to let go and let God, okay, let go and let love, remember I asked you to transpose that word into love, then we are going to have some prayer going on, because there's some things that we really just don't want to surrender to. Would you agree? Everybody's quiet now, unless
Yes.
you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Amen.
Can you give me some examples of how? I mean, I don't really like going back to it. Once I get over things, I don't like going back. But that even now, there's some things that you're really struggling to try to just really let go, and you're wondering, how on earth am I going to do this thing? But now the master teacher is showing us that I've gone through all these things, and now I've gotten to this thing as death, and we really do believe those affirmations until
Oh, yes.
somebody's close to us,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
that somebody's close and we love and we don't want to let them go, then we don't know if we really believe in this thing where there is no death or not.
Yes.
But now Jesus goes all the way to Gethsemane, because he's showing us now that this was his thing. We may have another thing, but he had to surrender that belief. He had to surrender the fear, because he knew how brutal and how awful it was, and yet he was willing to do it. He was trying to surrender his total will to getting that done. So then what did he do? He went to the garden, he prayed, and one thing about it, he was smart enough to ask others to pray with him. Can we do that too?
Yes.
We
And
need
see,
some help sometime, don't we?
I
Yeah.
think it's significant as well that he told them to watch and pray,
Yes.
because he was dealing with the concern. He knew they were going to come and get him. And
Mhm.
he's trying to work through this. So he told his men, watch and pray. And they
And
kept
who
calling.
were they? And who were they? He had 3 of his disciples with him.
Well, it had to be John, Peter, and now John, Peter, and Andrew, or
It
John,
was
Peter,
James. It was
James.
the Zebedee brothers. Okay. He had what he know now. This is metaphysical now we're getting in here. Okay. He went into this place with fears, and now he needs prayer. And now he knows he needs help in prayer. So he brings along the 3 areas that are very much needed for him to get through this. And that's faith,
Love.
strength, love, and wisdom. Is that right?
Hmm.
Okay. These are the things, divine wisdom, help me with the truth, Father. Help me do this. And when he would go back and thought that maybe he was just about to get there, he went back and yet he found they were asleep, which means these thoughts in him just would not let go. They would not let go. Now, have we been there? If we're honest with ourselves, as we get naked like this, that we go there with all this metaphysical stuff, and we carry the Bible in our pockets and our pocketbooks on our shoulder, and yet we get to these places, and honey, that stuff don't mean nothing in that time. And we need
Yeah.
prayer. And
Yeah.
this is when we do seek assistance. He left and then he went back and he found them doing what again?
Sleep.
Still asleep. Still asleep. Which means metaphysically, he still is not able to let this stuff go just yet. He's still working with it. And then I remember when Reverend said, if it's possible, will you take this away from me?
Mm.
Which I've said before.
I was going to say that what we used to say in the old vernacular, can you dig it? I mean, has it ever happened to you?
Oh yeah. You go
Now,
through something and you can't figure out how to release it. You can't figure out how to let it go, and you ask the Father, would you take this from me? And it
And I remember Reverend Callahan had said that a lot of times it's the fear, it's just in the humanness, no matter where this faith is, and this chapter tells you that faith is really so necessary. But he wants to do this because he's at this point where he really believes it. But now how is he going to live it? And so then he goes back a 3rd time and he just said, okay, this is not working. And then they come for him. And then he has this experience, and then he goes to the cross. He goes to the cross. And then he gets there, and in all his humiliation and nakedness, everything there open for everybody to experience because they made it that way. His 2 thoughts now are paradise, and the other one was getting out of this. And that's what that was about with those 2 thieves. So he's still having a problem doing what?
Mhm.
He's still having a problem surrendering.
Yeah.
He's still having a problem surrendering.
Hmm.
And I mean, we get there. We get there. And I remember one of the Gospels indicates that his prayers were so strong and so deep that he began to sweat drops that appeared like blood.
Yes.
In other words, it was just that grueling to him. But yet he wanted to do this. And have you ever really surrendered to something that you knew was not good for you, but you still felt like you could work it out? I ain't about to let this go just yet. And you have this agony, and yet you're between a path or a fork in the road. You don't know whether to dip or you just can't do it. And yet here he is now, have gone through all of that. And he's on the cross now, and he's got these two thoughts in his mind. If I can just get through this, I can exercise my perfection and experience paradise. But you got this other thought over here, and what's it saying? Who remembers?
Oh, you talking about the other thief?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was telling him, you know what, if you all that, why don't you
Get us
on out of this?
Yeah, you bad. You bad. You got the power. You bad. You can do this. Get us out of this. And that's sometimes what the ego does. It tells you that whatever's happening, it's not true. You know, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
I got this. I can do this. See the I can do this. Not I am one with the only presence and power that is. And in the denials, it says that I of myself can do nothing, but greater is he that is within what?
Within
Me than whoever is where?
in the world.
In the world. You have to deny that there's nothing out there that can come nigh you. But it's hard to do when you're in some of this stuff, to surrender to the truth. But you have to do it. So then he comes to the realization in his mind that there's something that I really have to let go and let God. And that was forgiveness. And that's a hard thing to surrender to. If you got somebody that's messing with you, messing over you, really doing you in, to surrender and let go.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been there?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Come on, Ted.
All the time.
But what did Jesus do? What did he do? He said, forgive them, Father,
But they know not what they do.
for they
Yes.
know not what they do. In his mind, he's saying, forgive all these stuffs I got because, hey man, this thinking ain't right. You know, get them out of me because I want to do this. I want to give this up. They got to go. They got to go. And then he finally comes to the point where he really is ready to cross over, and he says,
Well, he says it's done.
Father, into your hands
Mm-hmm.
I commit my spirit.
Yeah.
He finally got enough strength and love where he no longer had to let go and let God. He finally arrived at the place where he could let God and let go.
Mm-hmm.
He could surrender. He could love and surrender.
Yes.
Any comments? Any questions? What?
Beautiful.
Amen.
That's
I think
beautiful,
that's
Reverend.
deep.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes,
That
that's
was
deep.
so beautiful.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. He had gone through letting God and let go. And that's the only way it's going to work. And what really happens is, what the book tells us, is that when we're able to do that, these fears that about surrendering, about letting go, giving out, giving in, all this stuff, when you let God and let go, you realize that you have not lost anything. you have gained
Gain
everything.
Mhm.
You don't lose anything. You gain everything.
That's right.
And this one scripture that I love, and it's my favorite New Testament scripture in 1 Corinthians 2:9. We read it last week in our daily inspiration. It says that I have not seen, ear has not heard,
No.
neither has it entered into the hearts of man, those things which God has prepared for them that love him. I
Yes.
don't care how much good you see. And I mean, the cars now are rolling into the places. If you want to see what they look like, oh, and if you want to see these new clothes coming for fall, I mean, you can't imagine in your mind nothing that God has for you that love him. You just cannot, in your finite consciousness, understand it. But when you surrender to God and let go, you open yourself up to all of his good, all of his love. And it can be a very, very beautiful thing. And it goes on, it says that when you surrender the I, you get a great reward. It has it in this book, and I think I'll go to it next week. But it says we have a great reward when we can do this. And you know, as for me, I'm for looking for the stuff that I haven't seen, because I go out here, and I remember Reverend Ann used to teach, and she said, you need to get out here and find out what's out there. Sometimes we don't know what's out here. And once we get out there and we see the good out there, can you believe that it's something even better that we can't even conceive that God has for us? We, those of us who love him, that can get to that surrendering the false self for the true self. Any questions? Any comments?
No, that's beautiful, Reverend.
Yeah, Reverend, I feel completely fed. And I want to tell you something. I'm glad this was recorded, because the next time Andre and I have to do a radio program or something, a lot of what just came out of your mouth is going to be repeated. And I'm going to claim it for myself.
Okay, well then I yield back to Reverend James, Reverend Andrea. Love you.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
It was awesome.
Awesome. Yes. So, Reverend,
I want to say something real quick. It's you know, the two things. The way that was displayed, you know, when you're talking about giving up things and, you know, mimicking that, you know, Jesus did it and we were able to do it. You know, it'd be something as simple as, you know, like for me having to give up chocolate and certain like that so that I can get through. You know. I can do it. I know I can do it. It's a struggle, but I can do it. And it's something that you would use that scripture, eyes have not seen, ears have not heard. That was the topic of my conversation yesterday in the meeting that we had. Dan knows oh so well what I'm talking about. So thank you for reiterating that tonight. Thank you.
Well, you know what? It's what we think in this book, that last paragraph in that particular chapter says, it's always what you think you know. That's what we really get in trouble, because unless our thoughts are connected with the true source of our thought, which was the mission of Jesus, we ain't thinking about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
well, that was awesome. Reverend will be back next week to continue to move through her chapters. And we really appreciate that, Reverend. That was very beautiful. Very beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Good job, Reverend May.
Yeah, it gives us something
Thank
to
you,
think about in regards to, honey, mute yourself. Gives us something to think about in regards to what we need to release. And what I got from all of that is that Jesus really released anger, he released unforgiveness, and he released fear.
He released control.
He released control.
Man.
And we have to do the same thing if we're serious on this spiritual journey. So I really thank you. And I thank everyone that is here tonight. Is there any comments? Anybody have some aha moments? Because we still do have about 9 minutes.
Hi, everyone. This is Sherry. I just want to say that this is revelation for me. It's also confirmation for me as well. Uh, just talking today to my cousin and my aunt, and I feel confident in being able to let go and let God take care of my children and just me in general, because I know, that I'm on the right path, because just because we're talking about this, and I hadn't even got a chance to listen to the audio book, but I was wrestling with that. I was wrestling, should I, shouldn't I? I don't want to be a doormat again. So should I, shouldn't I? But this makes me feel more confident in not getting myself intertwined in other things that it's not God's business right now. Not for me, because they're grown children. So I just thank God that I can let God and let go.
Yes.
For my family.
But I want to say this, and I have to say it because it's in me and it's my heart. I wanted you to see the flow of the ministry, that it's a God thing. Now, people that know me well, that's my mantra. And what I'm saying is everything we've been doing is surrendering. Every lesson has taken us to surrendering. And that means that we are getting closer and closer to being able then to let God and let go.
Yeah.
And it's reflecting in these lessons. And so I'm so thankful that the reverends are open and receptive to these lessons, and that we are drawn and attracted to them, so that we can embrace this for our own self. And and Jesus says in this chapter, I came here to teach this, and I'm still teaching it today. So it's just as good today as it was in yesteryear when I was here.
Yes.
And if it was for me, then it is for you. That's what he says up there in the introduction. This is just not for me, because I am not the only one divine. We are all divine. And I remember when Dr. King had his, Dr. Martin Luther King had his, what do you call it, epiphany. He realized that his ministry was not just for civil rights, it was for human rights. And therefore his ministry went into another direction. And you know the rest.
And I don't know about anybody else, if you guys have been working with this and applying it in a practical way. If you have something in yourself that is wanting to come out, some divine idea that is within you, these lessons will help them come out. I don't know if anybody else here is having that experience.
Well,
but I know who? Come on, Dan.
You know, I've been having an experience for a little while now, and this morning I really had another experience, and I just had to go into meditation, and I started listening, and like you said, staying in the presence. So I had to get in what they call the vortex. And I kept saying, well, how do I get in the vortex? How do I lift my spirits? And I had to go to love. I just had to walk in love and know that love is the answer. And I've said, nothing's going to take this joy away.
Yes.
This is where I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay here.
Amen.
The rest.
Amen.
You know that song, I Surrender All. You cannot surrender. You cannot have the I surrendered until that's a past tense, until you go through the process of surrendering. And I remember when I got on the computer and I was trying to, print out my definition. Every time I wrote surrendered, it would have that underscore like was incorrect. And I kept saying, well, what is this? And what it is that you can't get past into having surrendered until you surrender.
Yes.
So you have to go through that process of letting this thing go, and it's not easy because we've been taught that, hey, we don't have to do that. You can't give in and give up. And then one of the other things that I thought about was that it's just so good, all the things that God has for us. And I thought about that song, it's unspeakable joy. Woo! It's unspeakable joy. You can't even find, I think somebody had a lesson last week, they couldn't come up with the words, and they were trying to find some words to say what they had to say. It's unspeakable. It's just something that you can't even define, but yet it's so good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. So we're at 8:27. I want to remind everybody of the upcoming fellowship that's at 700 Beta Drive. We're going to be putting the men front and center. And so Jim Graham, Charles Callahan,
Charles Stevens.
and Charles Stephen. I know.
Before you go any further, Reverend Charles is here. Reverend, that information that I have gotten to record, I'm going to put on a flip drive, and I will drop off at your house either Friday evening or Saturday morning so that you can listen to it.
And I also have a young man coming. He is going to share his story. And Harvey Zay told me he was going to MC. So the men are, Jim, that echo is driving me crazy. The men are front and center. And so I'm very, very excited about that. That's going to be really good. I'm asking everybody to please, please invite someone, because we really want to start to move this ministry to another level. We really want to start to push this ministry to another level. And as we get closer to our anniversary in February, we're gonna push a little bit more, because we got to move it to another level. And so with that being said, Reverend May, I'm going to ask that you pray us out.
Okay. As we just stay in this consciousness of love, we know that it attracts all to us that we need, that its magnetic power and its binding power seals everything that we have brought to us in the center of all that we do in our lives and in this ministry. When we also know that we're going to do this with tenderness, unselfishness. We're going to stay unified in all that we think and do, and know that if there's anything going on, it's God going on. That's the only reality. And we're going to stay one with you, Father. And we're going to ask that you continue to go with Reverend Andre and Reverend James and all of those who made comments that they're trying to surrender the false self. And they're doing it with unconditional love. That means that they have given it to you, Father. They are letting go.
Yes.
And letting God. And now that they've arrived, they're letting God and surrendering to you. I speak not only for them, but for myself. And I ask that you lift us all up to the truth of our being. And for this, Father, I say thank you.
Thank
In
you.
the power and name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. And so it is. I've been on Facebook a few times. I saw nothing. So clearly I don't understand what I'm doing. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.